really upsetting me.
Are you okay? Sorry about that.
Can we stop? Can we stop the interview? Is that okay?
So sorry, guys.
You and your friends take from my vault. Don't eat anything.
The Harry Potter series isn't short on dark moments, but one scene stands out as especially disturbing. So much so that it left Emma Watson in tears after filming. Determined to make the moment feel as real as possible, she dove into unsettling research, but nothing could fully prepare her for what happened when the cameras started rolling. Her raw, gut-wrenching screams shocked the entire crew. So, what was it about this scene that pushed Watson to such an emotional breaking point? Let's find out. Emma Watson's unbelievable road to stardom. Like a lot of kids growing up, Emma Watson always dreamed of being an actor, but unlike most kids, she didn't just become one. She starred in one of the biggest and most successful movie series of all time. Watson had never acted professionally before stepping into the role of Hermione Granger in the Harry Potter movies. She was only 10 years old. One day, she was just a regular kid doing school plays, and the next, she was a rising star. But despite it being her first real acting job, landing that life-changing role wasn't easy. While most actors endure multiple auditions for a major part, Watson faced far more than you might expect. She once said she was practically glued to the phone, waiting for calls after each audition. She went through 8 before hearing anything. Then, on the 9th, David Heyman, the film's producer, told her she was the preferred candidate. Before she even had time to process what that meant, everything moved fast. A picture was taken of her with Daniel Radcliffe and Rupert Grint. And suddenly, the internet was buzzing. By the time she got home, reporters were already outside. Her family didn't even hesitate. They packed up and moved into a hotel. From that moment, Emma Watson wasn't just a kid anymore. She was a star. In 2001, at just 11 years old, Emma Watson made her film debut as Hermione Granger, the sharp-witted and courageous friend who quickly became a fan favorite. Almost overnight, she and her co-stars found themselves at the center of a global phenomenon. Despite the whirlwind of fame, Watson maintained a sense of normalcy. She continued attending school, spending time with friends, and leading a life that, in many ways, remained unchanged. At 12, she reflected on how fame affected her relationships, acknowledging that while some classmates reacted differently, most treated her the same. Her close friends remained grounded, curious but unfazed. She still played sports, still participated in the same activities, still, in many ways, just a kid navigating an extraordinary new reality. With the first movie being a massive hit, she didn't just stick to school, she threw herself into acting. She loved the challenge. She once talked about a tough scene in the second film, saying she enjoyed it because it pushed her limits. Even at 12, it was clear she wasn't just a regular kid playing a role. As the movies went on and kept smashing records, Watson grew with her character. By 14, when she was working on the third film, she was already thinking deeply about who Hermione was. She hoped she did the character justice, because she knew how much fans cared. Even as a teenager, she carried herself with a maturity beyond her years. No diva antics, no inflated ego, just an unwavering sense of gratitude. She understood the rare opportunity she had and never took it for granted. The Harry Potter series was a global phenomenon, far beyond anything she had ever envisioned, and she embraced it with humility. She kept working hard, pushing herself, and proving she had the talent to back up the hype. And honestly, she and Hermione had a lot in common. She even admitted that after playing the character for so long, she didn't feel like she had to act much anymore. There was so much of Hermione in her, and her in Hermione, that it all felt natural. She loved when the characters clashed more. It made everything feel real. Harry, Ron, and Hermione had always been inseparable, but now they argued, struggled, and grew. It wasn't just friendship, it was life, and to her, That made playing the role even more exciting. When she worked with Mike Newell, the director of the fourth film, she respected how much he pushed her. He didn't let anyone slack off. He expected them to be professionals, and she loved that challenge. As her fame grew, Emma Watson became more than just an actress. She became a role model, particularly for young girls. Aware of how the media often depicted them as superficial or uninformed, she was determined to challenge that narrative. Through her portrayal of Hermione Granger, she reinforced the idea that intelligence was a strength to be embraced, not downplayed. It was a message she carried beyond the screen. Despite her prominence, Watson remained grounded. Raised in a family of lawyers, she was never entirely drawn into the Hollywood spotlight. Education and personal growth held as much significance to her as acting. Financially, she never had to work another day in her life, but that was never the motivation. For Watson, learning was its own reward. Why Emma Watson was ready to quit Harry Potter. When you think about the Harry Potter franchise, the real heart and soul of both the books and the movies has to be that fearless trio: Harry Potter, Ron Weasley, and Hermione Granger. In the 8 Harry Potter movies, those 3 characters were played by Daniel Radcliffe, Rupert Grint, and Emma Watson. Cast at just 10 and 11 years old, they grew up on screen. Aware of the challenges that came with early fame, director Chris Columbus took it upon himself to caution them about the pressures and pitfalls of stardom, especially at such a young age. Columbus made it clear, this was just a movie, just work. He drilled that into them, making sure they didn't get caught up in the glitz and the star treatment. He even told them straight up to stay away from certain Hollywood pitfalls, referencing what had happened to Macaulay Culkin. He didn't want them to lose themselves in all the attention. But let's be real. Being thrown into the spotlight that young is never easy. Radcliffe, for one, found himself leaning hard on alcohol while he was working. He explained that the quickest way to forget people were watching was to get really drunk. But the more he drank, the more people watched, which only made him drink more to escape it. For Watson, being the only girl in the main cast meant she had to handle fame and child stardom pretty much on her own. Tom Felton noted that being younger, she lacked the same support system that he, Radcliffe, and Grint had. Many overlooked the weight she carried and the grace with which she carried it. But even beyond that, Watson's experience was different in another way: how quickly and inappropriately she was sexualized. In an interview, Radcliffe pointed out how unfair it was that people saw his transition from Harry Potter to romantic lead as unconventional, yet had no issue with the way Watson had been sexualized from the very start. He wasn't wrong. Watson herself recalled that on her 18th birthday, photographers laid down on the pavement to take pictures up her skirt. Those images ended up on the front pages of English tabloids the next morning. If they had been taken 24 hours earlier, they would have been illegal. But because she had just turned 18, they were suddenly fair game. Watson had always dreamed of acting, but she never anticipated committing to a decade-long project. She later confided in Grint that the prospect of lifelong fame unsettled her.
I had a really terrible crush on Tom Felton.
But you know why? Because girls love a bad guy.
We love a bad guy.
The demands of celebrity, coupled with her dedication to academics, nearly led her to step away. During those years, she often felt isolated. Though she and her co-stars shared a close bond, they rarely spoke about the pressures they faced. Unlike her castmates, Watson was consistently hesitant when it came to signing new contracts. Producer David Heyman later revealed that for her, negotiations were never about financial incentives. Each time a new agreement arose, the question was always the same: did she truly want to continue? Ensuring her well-being, particularly in relation to her education, became a key consideration throughout her time with the franchise. The shocking reality of being Hermione. Emma Watson spent a full decade portraying Hermione Granger, an experience she remains grateful for, though not without some mixed emotions. The role shaped her in ways no traditional training could. After years in front of the camera, She finally saw herself as a true actress, gaining a clearer sense of her craft and future possibilities. Remarkably, she had never acted before landing the part at just 11 years old. Over the next 10 years, she worked with animals, navigated complex special effects, performed stunts, and learned from some of the most accomplished actors in the industry. To Watson, it was an education unlike any other, an immersive, high-intensity film school. She understood how fortunate she was and looked forward to applying those lessons to new challenges beyond the wizarding world. But it wasn't all great. Growing up on a film set meant almost no control over her own life. Every second of her day was scheduled. When she got picked up, when she could eat, even when she could go to the bathroom. She spent more of her life pretending to be Hermione than actually being herself, and that was something she struggled with. Watching those early films wasn't easy for her either. She sees that little girl on screen, knowing it's her, yet feeling as if she's watching a stranger. The awkward phases, the oversized hair, she's even laughed about it. So much time has passed that the person she sees barely feels like herself. But in revisiting those moments, she also finds it fascinating to trace the evolution of both Hermione and the girl who played her. For a while, she attended Brown University, but juggling school and filming Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, Part 2, just wasn't working.
I've just loved it ever since. As a child, you love Disney, but as an adult, you still love Disney because it sort of connects you with that childlike feeling.
Flying back and forth between the US and the UK, she felt stretched too thin. She knew she wasn't giving her best either, so she decided to fully commit to finishing out the 10 years of work she'd put into Harry Potter before returning to her studies. Filming that final movie, though, it was anything but glamorous. Watson, along with Daniel Radcliffe and Rupert Grint, went through long hours and rough weather. It was physically and emotionally draining. She spent most of the movie cold and wet, and it took a toll on her. She even broke down to director David Yates, telling him how exhausted she was. But Yates actually thought it helped the film. He told her that the exhaustion made their performances more real, that the trio looked like unexpected heroes, worn out but still pushing forward. It worked for the movie, but there were definitely moments when Watson just wanted to kill him for it. She was so tired that she'd fall asleep anywhere she could on set, on chairs, on the floor, curled up in random spots.
They have been so supportive. They've been really nice about it. They saw it when I saw it, so...
The set photographer even had pictures of her passed out everywhere, though she's sure those will never see the light of day. But in the end, Yates was right. Their exhaustion added something real to the story. And after more than a decade of playing Hermione, Watson felt like the character had finally grown into someone much closer to her personality. David Yates wanted an honest performance, and for Watson, it was a relief to play Hermione as someone more human, rather than an over-the-top version of herself. Emma Watson's emotional breakdown. Explained? Daniel Radcliffe rises from the set after an intense action scene, his breath still heavy. He removes his Harry Potter glasses one last time, pausing as he wipes away a tear. Nearby, Emma Watson and Rupert Grint are crying too. Then, as the director calls out, "It's a wrap," the weight of the moment settles over them, a final goodbye to the world they grew up in. Producer David Barron, who was there for those final moments, later recalled how emotional it was. All three of them just burst into tears. It was the end of an era, the very last shot of main filming for Harry Potter, and it was such a simple scene. Just a green screen shot. One by one, they took turns diving onto a crash mat. 2 or 3 takes, and that was it. That was the end of Harry Potter. In theaters, with the magic of special effects, the scene would show them being chased down a hallway before being thrown to the floor. But, in reality, that moment wasn't just another scene. It was the closing of a chapter that had shaped their entire childhoods. Daniel later reflected on it, talking about how special those years had been. One thing he took for granted over that decade was the fact that he was playing an action hero.
I'm hopeless. You're just flourishing your wand too much. Try it like this.
Something most actors don't get to do, sliding 40 feet down a roof, bursting out of a ring of fire, doing all these incredible stunts, he knew he probably wouldn't get to do that much anymore. And he also understood that to many people, he would always be Harry Potter. He accepted that, as long as the people making films didn't see him as only that, he figured it wouldn't hold him back. Rupert Grint had a similar perspective. He described the experience of growing up in such a unique way, something hardly anyone else could relate to. It had been a pretty sheltered life, full of restrictions, small things like not being able to ski or not having as much free time, but he didn't regret any of it. After all those years playing Ron Weasley, he admitted that the character had become part of him. Ron would never really be gone. Emma Watson also spoke about how much it all meant to her. After they wrapped that final scene, she said, there were buckets of tears. She missed playing a character she knew like the back of her hand. Hermione just came to her naturally. She had so much strength and heart, and while Emma was sure she'd find another character she loved playing, she doubted she'd ever find one she loved as much as Hermione. With that, the filming was done. 8 movies.
I was such a loser. I really...
Billions at the box office. All that was left now were the movie premieres. Fans had been gathering for days, lining up along the red carpet, waiting for the Harry Potter cast to arrive for the final premiere. And they weren't disappointed when Emma Watson stepped out in Trafalgar Square, looking absolutely magical. She brought full-on fairy tale glamour in a floor-length, tiered Oscar de la Renta gown, looking like something out of a storybook. She paired it with dazzling Boodle's cabaret white gold earrings with citrine briolette drops, worth thousands, and a matching ring also worth thousands. But as stunning as she looked, those smiles didn't last long. Emma, along with many of her co-stars, broke down while saying goodbye to their time in the Harry Potter series. Standing with Daniel and Rupert at the premiere of Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, Part 2, Emma thanked the fans for their unwavering loyalty and support, her voice heavy with emotion. After a decade in the role, saying goodbye was heartbreaking. She spoke of how much those years had meant to her, how deeply she would miss Daniel and Rupert, and Hermione. The character felt like a little sister to her.
Malfoy, you okay?
Though the trio had already begun dreaming of future collaborations, in that moment, the reality of it all ending was sinking in. Then Rupert started speaking, and that was it. Emma couldn't hold back the tears anymore. David Heyman, the film's producer, offered his shoulder, and she held onto him tight as he gave her a comforting kiss on the head. Rupert said Ron Weasley would always be a part of him, but it was weird thinking that he wouldn't be wearing all those questionable knit sweaters or spending every day on set with Dan and Emma. It was an emotional night for everyone, even J.K. Rowling. The author broke down, thanking the actors for everything they had done for her favorite characters. And she thanked the fans too, the ones who had stood in line for years, waiting for each new book. The final movie premiered across 3 West End cinemas, turning central London into a full-on wizarding wonderland. Years later, the emotions were still there. Emma Watson was in tears in the first trailer for the Harry Potter 20th anniversary, Return to Hogwarts Reunion Special. The cast and crew gathered again to reflect on the films that made them superstars. It was no surprise that things got emotional between Emma, Rupert, and Daniel, especially when they started talking about the journey they had all been on. During the 20th anniversary of Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, Emma talked about the role that made her famous. The Harry Potter stars had seen their net worths explode after those 8 movies, but Emma admitted that the fame and fortune had come with a lot of guilt. She had even talked about it in therapy, asking herself, why me?
So perfect, I dare say one drop would kill us all.
She wondered if others might have embraced the attention more easily than she had, struggling to reconcile her success with that uncertainty. Time had passed in an instant, yet, in many ways, it felt like a lifetime. As Watson became visibly emotional, she shared a sentiment that resonated deeply. During life's darkest moments, Harry Potter had a way of making things feel richer, of offering comfort. Moved by the moment, Rupert Grint reached over and embraced her. The bond they had formed over a decade of filming remained unshakable. They were more than co-stars. They were family. The Harry Potter scene that left Emma Watson in tears. When books, Emma Watson's emotional breakdown explained, T turned into movies. Squeezing in every single scene just isn't possible. So, for fans, that means not all of your favorite moments will make it onto the big screen. And with the Harry Potter series, as the books went on and the characters got older, the story got darker, heavier, and way more emotional. Deathly Hallows. Part 1? Easily one of the darkest films in the whole series. And for Emma Watson, her most emotional moment? That brutal torture scene at Malfoy Manor, when Hermione gets tormented by Bellatrix Lestrange. Any Potterhead will recall the harrowing moment between Helena Bonham Carter's Bellatrix and Emma Watson's Hermione. In a scene that left a lasting impact, Bellatrix carves mudblood into Hermione's skin, a moment so distressing that Watson's screams during filming were deemed too intense for the final cut and had to be toned down. Emma went all in to make sure that scene felt real. She researched, watched documentaries, and even spoke to people who had survived torture, doing everything she could to make the moment feel as raw as possible. But later, she realized she might have gone too far. The screams? They weren't just acting, they shook the crew on set. She even acknowledged that it unsettled people. A reaction she considered a sign she was doing her job well. But that didn't make the experience any less harrowing. Director David Yates shared the sentiment. The screams were difficult to endure. He described the atmosphere on set as eerie, as if Emma had tapped into something visceral, something beyond mere performance. In that moment, he believed she had transcended expectations, delivering a depth that few had anticipated. Even Helena Bonham Carter, known for embracing villainous roles, found that scene difficult. Emma later revealed that Helena simply couldn't tap into the darkness that day. It wasn't just a performance. It was deeply unsettling. And for an actress who thrives in such roles, that spoke volumes. The dark side of Emma's fame. For over a decade, Emma Watson's life was defined by Harry Potter. She grew up on screen, transforming from a child star to a global icon. But when the series ended, the sudden intensity of fame pushed her toward activism. In an interview with British Vogue, Watson admitted she felt uneasy simply existing in the spotlight without using her voice for political and social causes. It no longer felt right to remain silent. Just as Hermione Granger fought for house elf rights in Harry Potter, Watson had been championing gender equality for years. In 2014, she was named a UN Women Goodwill Ambassador and helped launch He for She, a movement pushing for gender equality. She also got really involved in humanitarian work, spending time in Bangladesh and Zambia, and became an ambassador for CamFed International, a nonprofit that helps girls in Africa get access to education. By 2017, Emma Watson wasn't showing up on screen as much. Since she started acting, there had only been a couple of years, 2003 and 2016, when she wasn't in a movie. But after a few roles in 2017, her film work just about disappeared. She did play Meg March in 2019's Little Women, but that was the last time she was in a full-length movie. Maybe things would have been different if she had taken the lead in La La Land. There were rumors she was going to play Mia, but that didn't pan out. Emma Stone ended up with the part and won her first Oscar for it. Watson later told Vanity Fair that it was one of those situations where names get attached to projects early, even before anything is agreed on. And for her, it just didn't work out, because she had already committed to Beauty and the Beast. A few years after her last movie, rumors started flying that she had quit acting. In February 2021, the Daily Mail reported that she was retiring to spend more time with her rumored fiancé, Leo Robinson. But as soon as the gossip started spreading, her manager, Jason Weinberg, told Entertainment Weekly that while her social media accounts might have been quiet, her career wasn't. After that Daily Mail article, Watson spoke directly to her fans on X, what used to be Twitter, in May 2021. She said that rumors about her engagement, or whether her career was dormant, were just ways to get clicks, true or not. And in another post, she added that, in the meantime, people should assume that if they didn't hear from her, she was just spending the pandemic like most people, failing at sourdough bread, taking care of her loved ones, and doing her best not to spread a virus that was still affecting so many. Then in April 2023, she opened up to the Financial Times about why she stepped away from acting. She admitted she wasn't really happy. She felt trapped. The hardest part for her was having to promote films she didn't have much control over. Standing in front of a movie and having every journalist ask how it lined up with her beliefs was tough. It was hard being the face of something when she wasn't involved in how it was made. Acting can be pretty restrictive, so it's easy to see why she wasn't loving that lack of control. She decided she only wanted to work on projects she truly believed in, so that if it flopped, she could own it, and if it was a hit, she could genuinely stand behind it. And just like Hermione, Emma has always been serious about her education. In September 2023, she went back to school to finish her MA in creative writing at Oxford University. During the pandemic, she started writing poetry and essays, and this degree gave her a chance to fully dive into her creative side. A source told The Sun that the course was designed for older adults and was part-time, which was perfect for Watson's schedule. She only needed to be on campus 4 or 5 days a year, since most of the coursework could be done online from home. Those minimal days on campus were great for anyone with a busy schedule, but for Watson, they were especially helpful because of how much attention she gets. According to reports, a security team accompanied her whenever she attended classes. Unfortunately, this wasn't just precautionary, it was essential. Watson had already faced alarming encounters. In September 2023, Chad Michael Bustow, the same man who had previously stalked Drew Barrymore, was arrested for attempting to break into her dressing room at a New York fashion show. Less than a year later, in July 2024, he was arrested again at Oxford University after insisting on speaking with her. Bustow told the press at the time that he was being held illegally and had no clue when he'd be allowed to leave. The police had all his stuff, and he claimed he was on the run and his life was in danger. He pleaded not guilty, and they let him go without bail soon after. With everything that had been happening in such a short time, it was easy to understand why Watson might just want to lay low for a while. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed it, please like, subscribe, comment, and turn on post notifications to stay updated with our latest content.